Charlotte after.
Probably better at that with the
that, and I'm actually using the degree that I got here.
Sometimes you get
So
something
they-
on there, you're
And somebody else did?
you want to make it.
Because they're like skilled labor.
Yeah, it's always that time. I think it's good.
I feel like I created that.
And they're doing so
Wow.
Unless,
yeah.
Fascinating. Is it because like so many family businesses in those fields?
Supply chain, everybody knows supply chain and not getting employees.
Where they would have gotten camping ministries or recreational
Right.
degrees, that they think it was kind of there because that was sustainable.
Right.
And now it's what, 100?
48 a year?
Yeah, well, yeah, but still you get.
Yeah. It can be maybe total, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe, yeah, sure, closer to 100.
It's a lot of money to spend.
Yeah, it sure is.
Nice.
Yeah, I should.
So the apartment looked fairly clean.
Really?
So
Yeah, it'd be
Okay.
interesting if those, the back people could
I was
measure
pretty
the
impressed actually.
Yeah.
Good.
Measurement, yeah.
So
Are they more efficient?
Very happy. Yeah.
This is fancy.
It's not real.
How are you?
And Chris, the tall, like
No,
tall,
it's
tall
a girl.
Oh, Carmelli.
They're more, I don't know.
Carmelli, I think.
AMU or she?
She is AMU, but I think she's living with JMU friends.
Oh, okay.
And she's the one who, do you remember when our kids were moving in? She was moving in, but she had no one to help her. Her parents sent her alone.
No.
And she moved in by herself.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that's why the kids disappeared for a period of time. They were just like helping her things. So they were like going back and forth. They did,
Or they had somehow known who
I
she
think
was.
they did. I think like Raven knew her.
Oh, okay.
And then she became friends with the others and stuff. So they seem to be there a lot now. Like, you know, in each other's apartments and stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
I think because.
Are you guys going down this fall at all?
I think so. Like, Lakia's coming home on Wednesday with Raven.
Is it?
Because that's what I do, right? It's like,
Yeah,
all right,
Wednesday.
I'm,
So she'll be home
exciting
Wednesday
happening. I
through
gotta
Sunday.
Oh, there's
buckle
no
down and do it.
No, then they come back for Thanksgiving a month later. Yeah, and then and I think they only have like that Friday off, don't they?
I think
Like
so.
Thursday and Friday.
Thursday and Friday,
Yeah.
and then on Monday off. So
Right.
Okay.
No, it's gonna be a Wednesday through Sunday thing.
you just fall break it. I mean, it was close enough that we could get something.
Figure it out. There's gotta be something
Yeah.
to make us better.
Well, they just didn't really have plans for that time, so they just released it.
Well,
Chill out and relax.
chill out and relax a little bit because I think they're working hard.
I think they're working super hard and they seem like Lakia's happy, but she's tired.
That's okay.
Like a side We'll be taking notes. Hopefully you solve it all for us.
Got it. My pleasure.
It was interesting to listen. So you came to breakfast and I was actually
Nice to see you, Lisa.
listen to him speak to his professors.
Yeah.
Different person. So I was maybe my work is
5 minutes.
it's actually one of the smaller
Yeah.
now.
Amazing.
All the new accounts
He's
are
so he's doing
10,000.
so Colin has changed his major to secretary. So
Oh, well, me too.
it's gonna go pre-law.
We can't.
And decided that was
You go to Christiana though.
we've done energized, right?
Yeah.
I just got he's got middle schoolers, right? So
Right.
don't do middle
Yes.
schoolers, but he said they're
And the
not
stuff's
terrible.
good. It's really good.
Handle middle schoolers.
Yeah, then you can do anything.
Good for
So
you.
I'm excited to
But
hear you to that.
yeah, he's tired. But
Hi, how are you?
Hey, how are you? Nice to see you. Welcome. How are you doing? Do I get a hug? How are you? I haven't seen you in like forever.
How's Tess doing this year?
Good. I saw that. Start moving the dirt. That's exciting.
Oh, yeah, they're playing quite different.
What's that? Oh, that was pretty recently. I was there
She's
about
playing
3
volleyball.
Oh, yeah, she did.
Yeah.
Go back, we
It's
can't
funny
use
because
it.
oh my gosh,
But we're running double shifts, that's
just under 5'2", right? So of course she's libero, right? That's where she plays the back row. So it's funny, we were watching college volleyball the other day. The announcer said, and here she comes, jumbo shrimp on the back row.
Yes, yeah, if, you know, the 30-foot expansion is gonna be tough.
Tuscan.
Oh, yeah, she's just athletic. Yeah.
Well, they're saying it is because having the gas stations, we're gonna up the number of people who warehouse.
Yeah.
Because like some
Yeah.
gas only want to
Right.
they walk out with $100 worth of stuff.
Yeah, I spent so many years watching her older sister play volleyball, and I think it just sort of absorbs
I'm
you.
involved in all that.
Right?
I have kind of like 30-foot for me on you guys. Because that's really not my forte. Gas stations are opened up all the stores. Every one of them has one. So I knew all the workings in the stores. I've never done a store with a gas station. Yeah. So,
I think the last 18 months were enough for me.
yes, I agree. So how did you have one?
Really nice. I'd rather have them with me than go.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But, you know, you have to learn when to I think
Also, they were able to get some extra money for those water dams.
yeah.
I thought you looked familiar to me too.
I do that. Drive, tell them,
See somebody in the ordinarily or wearing this, and you see everywhere, at a gym.
yeah, but I mean,
Oh, that's good.
It's just not coming through because they don't have the other cues to kind of help get you ready.
and I sit on the board.
I will do that sometimes, yeah.
Yes, I got
I have some sheets that I, like if I'm at, I'll see somebody across the room, I remember something about them, I look up
actually overnight. Yes.
How you doing, you know? And then when the water starts, she'll say, "Yeah, hi, Martin," and they say, they don't say anything. And it's bad because, you know, if you're a customer, you really don't know.
we're still trying to navigate working from home, so.
Meaning, you know. He's good here, people start booing.
I mean, I'm still in the house.
Oh, it's not that far. No, not at all.
Not in person, We've spoken so many times.
How are you? I know. One thing that's physical and you know, that's a big deal. Because otherwise we would have had I know the name. Good to see you. You know everybody here?
Pretty much. I haven't met Mark. Yeah, it's good. Happy to. Where do you live?
I noticed it. No, it's nothing. Yeah. Some chaos sometimes. I got a home.
I think we'll get started in about a minute or so. Well, it is so good to see everyone today. I was just commenting, we take these things for granted of getting together and being with one another, and when we can't do it, it's special to be able to do these things again. So I'm glad to see you all here today. So welcome to our fall event. We are calling this Reinvent, from Interruption to Inspiration. My name is Steve Huntsberger. I'm the Executive Director of the Indian Valley Chamber of Commerce, and I will be your moderator for the day. We are here broadcasting live, so all of you in the audience, of course, know that we are here at the Sellersville Theater, but we have a number of people that are joining us online, and this will be up on our YouTube channel this afternoon. So we're broadcasting live from the Sellersville Theater, so our thanks to Elaine Brick, the owner, and Dan Fea, the manager of the theater, for making this possible. I also want to thank our presenting sponsor, QNB Bank. QNB Bank has been serving the region for over 100 years with traditional retail and commercial banking services. They are invested in our local businesses and nonprofits, and they are a trusted supporter of the Indian Valley Chamber of Commerce. So thanks to our sponsors for this event today, and we're looking forward to hearing from their CEO, Dave Freemen, as part of our lineup of panelists in a few minutes. We have a great program today. We are going to be hearing from our guests about how they have moved through the last year and a half and learned more about themselves and how they have helped and to help and support and lead their teams through the challenge of COVID. I'll provide a quick introduction for each one of our panelists, but there is also more of a biography in the program if you'd like to read more about these folks. We have Dave Freeman. Dave Freeman. He is the CEO of QNB Bank. Jenny Fujita. Jenny is a partner with Fujita and Miura. Mark Bergey, CEO of Bergey's Inc., and Craig Edsill, CEO of Clemens Family Corporation. And would you join me in welcoming our guests? So this idea of reinvent has become a theme that I suspect many of us have been exploring over the last 18 months, whether we've wanted to or not. We quickly needed to transition our businesses and how we ran our companies, interacted with our employees and clients. And what had worked well on March 18 of 2020 certainly was not going to work well at all on March 19, 2020, and for many months going forward. We were literally, all of us, given 12 hours notice to figure out how to move forward. And after the initial shock and luxury of maybe 5 minutes to process the unfathomable idea of closing non-life-sustaining businesses at 8 p.m. on March 18, you all, moved into crisis mode and made some daring and creative decisions on how to move your business forward. And it wasn't just about business, right? It was really about caring for the health and welfare of your employees that relied on you for their livelihood, as well as your clients and customers that relied on you for your services and products. So we'll get into the questions and hear directly from our panelists. I want to thank you for your willingness to be here today and allow us to learn from you as you share some of these ideas that helped you move through this time of COVID. I will say we have a diverse group of leaders here today. So we have the CEO of a publicly traded company, Dave Freeman. We have a partner with a PR firm located in Kauai, so literally a third of a world away. Jenny's company is located. We have the CEO, a family member CEO of a family-owned business, and a non-family member CEO of a family-owned business. So I'm sure we will get many nuggets of wisdom to take with us back to our own business and personal lives. So Dave, I am going to begin with you. So I asked each one of our panelists to give me a quote to start off with. Not necessarily that they would focus their thoughts around it, but kind of something that was a guiding light to them. So I really like Dave's quote. He said, "During the coronavirus crisis, we informed our day-to-day decisions with our vision and mission. This helped us to make decisions that were consistent." I like that word. They were consistent with serving our employees, customers, communities, and shareholders. So my first question, Dave, for you is, like many businesses, Q&B had to respond quickly to the governor's order to have your team members work remotely. After the initial shock and challenges to make that happen, what benefits did you as a company recognize?
Great, thanks, Steve. Glad to be here today. I've been to this theater probably 100 times in my 11 years here, and this is the first time I'm facing that way instead of this way. So I'm trying to reorient myself, but thanks, William and Elaine, for hosting us today. You know, what we really found is how much more work-life balance we can create for people by allowing them to work from home. Now, obviously, we have customer-facing people in our branches where they have to be in the office to do their job. But many other jobs we have in our organization, whether it be relationship managers for our commercial accounts or deposit services or is on and on and on and on. Even our customer service center, we were able to take calls there remotely from people's homes. So we found that initially what we were all trying to scramble to do and make sure we provided the appropriate technology for people to be able to do their jobs from home has turned out to be a boon even afterwards. And I think my biggest challenge has been to convince our managers that they can come up with ways to measure productivity when they don't have somebody around the corner from them. But this is a great example. The other day, I was at the grocery store on my way home late in the afternoon, probably around 4 o'clock, and I ran into a woman who works at the bank. She had her grandson with her, and she's a full-time employee and works a lot of hours, probably more than full-time hours. But she said, well, I've arranged, I pick up my grandson every Wednesday afternoon. I take off Wednesday afternoon and take care of him so that my daughter can go to nursing school. And I just make up the hours on the other 4 days of the week that I work. And of course she is, probably that and more. So it's just, that to me was a shining example of how doing this remote work has allowed us to provide just as much productivity, but also allow people more work-life balance, being able to be home in the morning with their children getting off to school, or when they come home, or helping out with other family members, whether it be elderly or grandchildren or whatever those may be. So it's been very powerful for us and something we're going to definitely continue to do in the future.
So something that may have been missing in some people's lives were actually not necessarily a bad outcome from some of these things. Absolutely. So next question, banks had an extra layer of complexity put upon you. You were tasked with providing the lifeline businesses and nonprofits needed through the government funding of the Paycheck Protection Plan, or PPP. I think everybody here is very familiar with terminology PPP at this point. So can you tell us how your team responded and how you led through that huge, and I would say, I'm sure it was huge. I'm just going to assume it was a huge extra workload on your employees.
Well, there's one thing nice. The governor did recognize banks are essential businesses, which we always thought we were. It turns out that he thought we were too, which is great. But the PPP program was put into place very, very quickly with a relatively small government agency, SBA, administering that. And we quickly recognized with much trepidation that we had to be a participant in that and help all of our customers. And probably one of the biggest challenges is many of the customers, the dollar amounts were much higher in terms of to our borrowing customers, but the great number of participants and the most loans were deposit-only customers that never borrowed money before, many of them. So they needed a lot of hand-holding to get through that. So the first Friday that the portal opened up, our CFO was actually entering an application and as a guinea pig, and she started entering the application at 1:30 in the afternoon, and it was approved at 6:30. And we're like, oh no, how in the world are we ever going to get through all of these thousands of applications we're going to have? But anyway, the portal got faster. We figured out, some of our folks on their own figured out the best time to enter PPP applications was third shift, midnight to 8, because nobody else was entering applications at that time, so they went a lot faster then. So we didn't tell them to do that. We didn't ask them to do that. They figured it out and said, hey, I'm going to work this shift instead of working during the day. So we really, essentially, we batted 1,000. Of our customers that qualify for a PPP loan, apply for a PPP loan, they got a PPP loan. And then so far in the forgiveness process, we still have about 15% left to process, but we are batting 1,000 there too. And we think we took a lot of time and we asked a lot of questions. Unlike some of the fintechs that were in that business, we really wanted to make sure that at the end of the day, not only did you make the loan, but the loan got forgiven, because we had a few people that, despite our many phone calls and voicemails and email messages, did not put a forgiveness application. When they got their first bill, they rapidly recognized they ought to apply for forgiveness and got them in there that way. But it's been, so really, we really had to, our people just worked themselves really hard, and we tried to give people some extra time, extra days, and things like that. But as we got into this year, we kept on asking people, kept on saying, "I want to stretch out. I want to take my vacation days. Got to stretch them out." We finally said, "Look, you need to spend time with your family, reacquaint them with you, and so we want you to take your time. So no matter what, work's going to be there when you come back. Take your time off, get with your family, get some balance back in your life."
It was literally a all hands on deck experience, and I think we've experienced those things in the past, but certainly not to the extent that we have over the last year or so. So many small businesses have needed to make the switch to banking online. You may want to talk a little bit about that, but how has this then also affected your outlook at QNB on brick and mortar locations?
Yeah, we definitely still. Is my mic still working? Okay, I think my mic might be. It's okay. Okay, we definitely still believe in brick and mortar. But the importance of brick and mortar and how close those branches are has definitely changed. I think it used to be try to be at least 5 miles within the next branch, and then in certain densely populated areas or where it's difficult to get around, it might be even closer than that. We don't think that's necessary anymore, and we did see a significant shift. People that never had used online banking switched to online banking during the coronavirus simply because they couldn't get into the bank, or they had to wait in a drive-through line for 20 minutes because that was the only way we were serving them for a short period of time. So we definitely saw a change there. We think the brick and mortar still has a role to play. We kind of have a funny motto. It's not really a motto, but I joke about it. We leave no customer behind. So we try to interact with our customers however they want to interact with us. So if they want to come to a branch, that's great. If they never want to come into a branch, that's also great. But we think for the time being, there's certain things. If you're a business that takes cash, for example, you have to have a branch. You can't process cash online. You can't get coin online. So there are certain customers that need a branch. We think they're still going to have to play a role that won't be as important as they have been. And net, branches are going down every month in this country, with, interestingly enough, Jamie Dimon, J.P. Morgan Chase being an exception to that rule, and they're planning on opening up over 50 branches in the greater Philadelphia area. But I think that may be a little wrong-headed on the other side of that. But branches are important, but not as important as they have been.
Interesting. So as we talk about banking a little bit more and finances, what advice are you at QNB Bank giving your customers as they navigate their business through some ongoing supply chain issues?
Well, we really just want everybody to borrow some more money, please, because no one's borrowing money right now. Please borrow money. There is, seriously, there's a lot of cash out in the economy, partially because of PPP loans, idle loans, a variety of things. We're doing everything we can to support our customers however we can. Everybody has supply chain disruptions. which I'm sure the other gentlemen here with me today will have a lot to say about that. So we're just managing through it. We're trying to help people where we can. We are seeing still tremendous demand in real estate borrowing, and that's where the opportunities have been. But our line utilization is the lowest level it's ever been. So people just have a lot of money. We are benefiting that by having a lot of deposits in the bank, but we're not seeing the borrowing. So we're just helping them get ready for the next change as things come back online, and making sure they're prepared for when the supply chain disruptions hopefully go away in 12 to 18 months and everybody can start spending money again.
So this really is a case example of economics in real life. I mean, as we talk about the velocity of money, there's a lot of money floating around the economy right now. And you are either benefiting from it or not. It depends on how you look at it. So I think you take the glass half full approach. And then finally, Dave, what have been some of your major big takeaways from this experience that we've been through over the last 18 to 20 months?
Well, I think the one thing is, you really have to be open to new ideas. You have to have communication is so important. We created all kinds of different ways. We think we have pretty good communication, relatively small company, 200 employees. But we started having weekly town hall meetings where anybody could come in. Executives will all be there. If you had questions about what was going on, or you questioned how we were responding to coronavirus, for quite a period of time, we were meeting daily as an executive team. So I think the communication can always get better. I think we've even improved our ability to listen to our employees and take their ideas seriously. And as we were going through reacting to what was going on, we made some mistakes, and our employees were sure to let us know about those, and we made course corrections as we went on. So I think communication, which is always important, is even more important in these times.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate you joining us today. We'll hear from him in a few minutes yet. I neglected to mention to our audience that we will have time for Q&A at the end. So start thinking about your questions. We'll hopefully have about 15 minutes for that. I'm happy to introduce next Jenny Fujita. Jenny has been a good friend of mine and a friend of the Chamber for a number of years. And she has a bit of a unique scenario, and we'll hear about that. But her quote to start things off, which I think is, and it really, I think the quotes that each of our panelists have given us speak to their particular situation in really interesting and complex ways. So Jenny's quote was, "We found that all successes are owed to great relationships. This is why it's so important to relate authentically and deeply to your publics. The result is to love and be loved by those who matter most to you." So I'll probably have you talk a little bit about your business too, so weave that in. Many of us have been thrown into working apart from our coworkers. You've successfully been doing that for many years. As you remember, her business is literally located a third of the world away. While some of daily practices, so what are some of the daily practices and tools that keep you connected to your business partner and help you manage projects?
Thank you, and hello to everybody here today. Unbelievably, I graduated from Penridge, and this is my first time in Sellersville here. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, so yes, my business is on Kauai. We're a full-service communications consulting firm, 5,000 miles away. My business partner is there with her family. I'm here in Pennsylvania with my family. I lived there for 16 years, so a good chunk of my adult life, and had a lot of deep relationships there by the time I had moved here. So those relationships were established. Thanks. So when I first moved back to Pennsylvania in 2010, I really thought it was going to be impossible to hold our business together. I didn't think it was going to work. We'd been in business for about 10 years already at that point, but yet it seemed impossible that we could have 5,000 miles, an ocean and a huge chunk of land between us and still be able to manage this business. But we did, and I think the first step was just deciding that that's what we were going to do. We decided that we were going to hold our partnership together, we were going to hold our business together, and we were going to stay in contact with our clients and keep up those relationships. So every day, every weekday, we do a daily call. It's 8 a.m. Hawaii time, 2 p.m. my time here. We have a call, and sometimes that call lasts 15 minutes, sometimes it lasts 2 hours. So it just depends. And we don't program that call. It's really about my business partner and me touching bases with each other, not only personally, but for our business purposes. For a long while, we kept an email list going, sort of this running to-do list that we kept going for probably several years. And it included not only tasks that we had to do based on what our clients were, but it also included things like visions that we had or goals that we had so that we could see them all the time and focus on them. So we kept that going for quite a while, and now we're just so in the habit. We've been in business for 21 years already, so we're so in the habit of thinking in this way that it just is, we kind of go down that list automatically, even without having that written down. We tend to sometimes, through the day, we have to text. You have to choose your medium based on what's quick and what's accessible to you. And since we both have children, we both have families, we both have, parents and others that we care for, as Dave was mentioning, we have homes to care for, chores to do, errands to run. And so this is our tool. And so you have to have this good tool. And we, look at our email on there, but if we need each other quickly, we know that we can text. And we've provided, our cell numbers to our clients as well so that they can text us. Keeping it personal, I think, is key to keeping up the relationship. Like you do have to, with a business partner, people that you're closely collaborating with every day, it's important that you care for each other, that you know each other based on, your families and your histories together. That keeps you motivated, keeps you loyal to each other, making sure you have each other's backs and that you can accomplish what you need to accomplish.
You made two interesting comments that I just want to tease out real quickly. You said we make our decision and then we move forward. Mm-hmm. And I think that is so important for business people, anybody really, but particularly business people. You make the decision, you put the steps in place, you move forward, you create the map to go where you want to get to. The second piece is that idea, and I think the businesses in this community really get it. It's not just about business; it's about personal relationships. Yeah, the business is there, but it's really predicated on relationships. You had that with QNB and those PPP loans, Dave. Those were, you were literally a lifeline for those businesses. And Jenny, I think you said it very well. We care for our business partners and our clients because that's what it's about. Mm-hmm. It's not always about making money. Yeah, we want to make money, but it's really about the relationship. So I really appreciated that. So how do you personally stay connected to clients when you're far away? And have you noticed a shift in their acceptance of virtual communications?
Well, when I first came here in 2010, and I began this weird virtual backwards telecommute to Hawaii, I wasn't sure how that was going to go, and I worried for a long time that the relationships would start to fizzle away. I think the first thing is to really decide who your most important publics are. Like, who is most important to you and your business and your family? What clients, what allies do you have that you need to cultivate those relationships? I made an effort every time I went back to Kauai, which was about once a year, to meet with them and just rekindle that friendship and have some personal time with those folks. But in between, again, picking the right medium for them. So if I'm trying to communicate with Auntie Mayor, who is in her 80s. I might choose a different way to communicate than I would for somebody who's 25 years old. But that said, I am pleasantly surprised that even no matter what age, it seems, people are open to texting, they're open to Zooming. I've heard a lot of the complaints kind of stop about Zooming because it was a hard learning curve at first. People were like, I'm Zoomed out. We heard that. But then, I think as Dave mentioned, we started to realize how convenient it was to be able to care for our homes and ourselves and our family members and so on. So there definitely is openness to that. I would say in order to keep cultivating those relationships, though, Zoom and FaceTime are critical. Like, it's not the same to have a phone call. Texting is good, email is good, phone call is nice because you can hear the voice. Looking at a face is really critical every so often because you can only glean things, really glean people's reactions by looking at their face and their eyes. And so you need to do that every so often.
And it's so convenient to have those anymore. I mean, 10 years ago, it wasn't an option. We traveled to China as a family 4 years ago, and the best way for me to communicate with my father was through FaceTime. And it was awesome. And that was 4 years ago. But now it's an accepted business tool.
Yes.
It was kind of a fun oddity before. It's an accepted business tool. Thank you for sharing that. So you mentioned your business is 5,000 miles away with half the Pacific Ocean and most of the North American landmass in between. So you have dealt with isolation, quite literally. So how have you fended off that and the non-work distractions when it comes to working from home? Because I think that affects a lot of us that don't have that much space in between us and our businesses.
Right. Well, we've always been a home-based business. In fact, we won an award for this from the SBA like 10 years into our business, which I thought was so funny. But working from home definitely has changed. Like, the image of that has changed a lot because most of us are doing that now. So it's perfectly acceptable, very professional. It's understood that this works. So on Kauai, I didn't really face that isolation. We were working from home, but every day we had meetings with clients that were in person. Once I moved 5,000 miles away, I didn't have that choice. So I obviously could not meet with my clients in person. And it was lonely. There was probably a year where I sat back and I thought, I'm not sure I know how to speak in person with an adult human anymore. And I need to get back into the habit of doing that. It was really great by email, great by text, great by other virtual electronic mediums. But I started then scheduling lunches and breakfasts with people that may or may not be related to the business community at all. I didn't have to have an excuse for who they were. It was just people that I resonated with, enjoyed spending time with. So it could be people from church, people from business, another mom that I'd like to get to know, and just taking that time to either have a meal or go for a walk together every day. Like, you have to do this every day to have that personal contact. Beating the isolation is really important. You have to go out and do errands, like make yourself get up and go out of the house. And our rule is to always dress nicely. Like, don't wear your jammy pants and your t-shirt. Like, dress up like a real business person and go to the post office if you need to. You never know who you're going to meet at the post office. Right. So, but it is important to get up and do those errands, like go outside of the house, take a walk, meet your neighbor. That's what building community is about, and that relationship is how humans are designed. It's what we're wired for, and so we have to make the effort to do that every day.
I just think it's so fascinating that you have this down to a T because you've been doing this, you were on the cutting edge of this. You were cool before it was cool.
Right. When we were not cool, right?
Exactly.
Except to us. We
Except that,
thought we
yeah.
were cool.
So meeting new people and building relationships with those connections has become a real challenge for those of us who rely on networking events and those in-person meetings at coffee shops. How do you strengthen your networks, and how do you develop new clients and relationships?
Yeah, that's kind of a funny question because if you do all the preceding that I talked about, I have found, in our business at least, that you don't really have to do much of anything else. So we've never advertised, we've never done like formal networking or cold calling or anything like that. Like never in 21 years have we ever done it. All of our clients come to us by word of mouth through the relationships that we've built in all the ways that I just talked about. So that's how we do it. But we do have, ways that we stay in touch with our clients. We have mass communication methods like social media, which we boost, do posts and boosting those things. We use e-blasts. So it's nothing new to all of you. These are probably tools that you're using. But you can't just do that. You have to follow it up with the personal communications. And even if you're doing a mass communication like a MailChimp or a Constant Contact e-blast with some announcement, it's always helpful to take those and forward them to somebody special and say, just wanted to make sure you saw this, so-and-so, with their first name. So making it and keeping it personal, always critical.
I do that. I'm glad to know that that's
Good
okay.
job, Steve.
And then finally, what are some of your favorite benefits of working from home?
There are so many. I can't imagine working in an office space anymore. But I think Dave outlined some of those. When my business partner and I started our business, it was because I was pregnant with my daughter, and I wanted to make sure that I had time to raise her. And even though I had to have childcare at home or outside of the home, because you can't do it. If you have little kids, you can't work at home with the little kids around there. I mean, you might be able to put your meeting on mute for a few minutes while your 3-year-old plays on the floor, but it's difficult to find the time to focus. There will be times where you have to have your child there, but get good support so that you can have focused work time. But I loved being able to raise my children at home, to have that time with them. I love to be able to just, in the little gaps of time when I'm on my computer, to get up and do the laundry. I loved having a clean house because I could attend to it, an organized house because I could attend to it. There are times when you can put your meeting on mute and go off camera and fold your laundry while it's going on. There are some meetings that you can do that.
However, we don't encourage that.
We don't encourage that. I encourage that. We've got a lot to do. Women and men who are caring for their households, we have a lot to do. But I would say whatever it is, even pursuing your other interests besides business, it's so important to let yourself be inspired and give yourself time to do those other things, whether it's like me, I'm going to seminary now. So if there's something that you want to do, make it work for you. Make working at home work for you. So whatever it is that's important to you, work it into your day and make it happen. And that's the greatest benefit to me.
It goes back to that idea of making a decision and moving forward with it. I like
right.
that. Thank you, Jenny.
Welcome.
Mark Bergey. Mark is a family member, CEO of a family-owned business. And that has its own set of challenges and rewards. And Mark's quote, which I loved, was, "You're not alone. The past 18 months have been challenging, but it's encouraging to know that if we work together, our teams can overcome great adversity." And I think each one of these quotes here also really speaks to the personality of the individuals and their particular role that they hold. So, Mark, in the first quarter of 2020, you had some things happening at Bergey's that added to the complexity of everything else during the initial shutdown and subsequent reopening last spring. What was that, and how did you adjust to overcome those challenges?
All right, well, thanks, Steve, and good morning, everyone, and it's good to be here. And since everybody's sharing their Sellersville story, I remember watching Ricky Skaggs here back in the day, so that's my...
And he's coming again.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, I remember it well, Steve. Friday, February 28, 2020, we were closing on our largest acquisition to date at that point with over 100 employees. It was in central Pennsylvania. We had 3 new locations, and we were excited. Our team had worked hard to prepare for it, and we thought it was a really good fit for our company. And I remember at the closing, at the attorney's office when we were closing the deal, and I remember saying, kind of foolishly, there's this virus going on around the world, and I certainly hope it doesn't affect us in any way, but that came back to haunt me. But so our team was off to a great start the first couple weeks of March. We worked hard to go out to the locations and prepare them. Obviously, it was a new computer system, new phone system, and all those things. And as you know, if you don't know, the first 90 days of any acquisition are the most important times to implement your culture as well as your procedures and those type of things. So we felt good about it. We were doing really well. And then, just to bring your memory back, the red zone came about. The red, green, and yellow zones came. And so Montgomery County was considered the red zone at that point. And so I actually had a call from some of the leaders out at the Lancaster location, the York location, said, we would prefer if your people don't come out to visit us anymore. So we own the company, and now how are we going to implement all this? But so we switched over to online training, obviously using the Zoom as best as we could and all those things. But it was certainly not ideal situation. And I think we soon forgot about the location because we had to focus, our leadership team had to focus on what was going on within managing the COVID. And so anyways, the reality of it is we worked through it the best we could. It was not certainly not the best thing, but I'm very thankful how far we've come since that time. And I think looking back, I think the team members out there probably are appreciative of during the crisis in the beginning there of so many unknowns that the team appreciated having a larger group to be able to talk to, because we had a Zoom call with 20 different managers on sharing what we were doing to handle the situation right now. And so I think they would appreciate, and I know I've heard them say to me already, that they appreciated being a part of a larger company to understand what we were dealing with. So again, wasn't the greatest, but we're getting through it.
And like each speaker so far has said, and I'm sure Craig will say this also, there were things that came about through this whole situation that helped us do business better. So it accelerated the use of technology, but it was painful learning curve. But it's been something that we can take and continue to utilize. So Mark, when you and I met to prepare for this event, you shared something with me that I think is kind of unique, and I'm wondering if you can share with our guests about your journal.
Well, I don't know if I ever called it a journal, but I guess you're calling it a journal.
Memoirs.
I'm a history guy, and for years I would always write down highs and lows throughout the year. So as the year was going on and things were happening, celebrations within the company or different things happening, I would write a high or a low of that. So that's what I kind of did. And then at the end of the year, I would share that and just remind all the team what we had come through, what we had done. And so obviously during the initial shutdown there in March, I was encouraged to do this a lot more, but for a different reason. Because for my own self, I was trying to figure out and find those grasps. I was grasping for encouragement, things that we could share back to the team that was positive, that was happening. And so I guess I was grasping for hope during those times. And another thing I did that I'm crazy, I'm a kind of numbers guy, but I started actually tracking the cases that were occurring in Montgomery County because I was just hoping that I would see them start going down the other side, so I could, again, share the positivity. But so anyways, that was some of the stuff that I did with that. But looking back as I was preparing for this and thinking about it, it's neat to see some of the examples that I did write down, and I felt good knowing that I wrote a simple thing down that we were serving customers that were essential, either medical workers, their trucks were traveling with the medical supplies, and it felt good to know that our team was a part of helping that community and keep the emergency places going. So that was good. And I also wrote down many different times about the sacrificing that our team members were sacrificing. There was so much unknown. They were sacrificing for the company. Your cars come to our place, our customers, your trucks come to our place, and some people live in those trucks, and our technicians were getting in those trucks, and we had customers that were saying they had COVID, and they were traveling to New York to bring supplies to New York. And so you can just imagine some of the things that our team members were dealing with and were thinking about during that time. So those were the kinds of things I had written down. I also wrote down that I was appreciative of the notes of encouragement, and people were praying for me during this time. So those are some of the things that I wrote down and still continue to do today, but I appreciated it.
I like that idea of encouragement for you, but also the encouragement for your team members. And that becomes a virtuous cycle, doesn't it? Where we prop each other up and we support each other. That happens in our personal lives. It happens in business. And I hope that's what happens here today, too. So thanks for sharing that, Mark. That's pretty special stuff. So with what new or unique steps did you take to ensure, so let's get into the business things a little bit. What unique or new steps did you take to ensure that your business continued and became stronger as you moved forward?
Well, yeah, no, I think there's three things I think I'd like to share on this is having an executive team that was aligned and focused, and we got along really well, and that was something that just really, in my mind, we didn't have any hiccups there. It was, we ran into this crisis of something we've never experienced, but to have a team that was aligned and focused was really helpful. And I tend to be a person that's not so quick to make decisions, and so I heard this term by a leader called GETMO, which stands for good enough to move on. And so I started using that a lot in the decisions for my own self to say, hey, we got to move on. Not everything's perfect. We're maybe 80% there, but we got to go. And so that was something that I used. And then the other thing would be financial reporting. As Steve mentioned, on March 20th, vehicle sales were shut down indefinitely. We didn't know when they would be coming back, and we had to furlough over 300 team members immediately. We had over 100 million in vehicles on our lots, and so we knew the bank, QMB, would be calling us for their money. And so we started forecasting really fast where we were going to be. And like I said before, I'm a numbers guy. I appreciate numbers. But we took this whole numbers thing to a new level. And so it's been great. We came up with new reports, daily reports, and I think we did a good job before, but we're doing a much better job today because of it. And we're still using those reports as we go forward. And because, yeah, we were trying to figure out how long we could go without selling any new vehicles or used vehicles. So the last one I'll share is communication. That was already mentioned. One of the things that I wanted to do better was to communicate better with over 30 locations and 1,200 team members. I often thought about how can we communicate better to the team? How can I do a better job in that? And I had heard before the pandemic of a company similar to our size with a lot of locations sharing via YouTube. So I said to myself, that will never happen because that's something I don't like to do. And couldn't see my picture of myself being on a YouTube video. But pandemic, of course, changed that. And so we started a YouTube update video to our team members. And I'll tell you, in the beginning, it was Getmo for me. Again, I had to get over it and get going. But in the beginning when they went out, it was kind of rough. And so I had actually team members responding to me saying that I looked stressed and nervous. And I'm like, well, yeah, I was. And I had nephews taking pictures of me and sending them of all decorated too as well. So it was interesting. And so anyways, so we've done that now for since last March or April, I guess. And I would say I was feeling pretty good about myself. I was doing really well. And then one of my closest teammates came to me and said, Mark, I think you should consider getting a speech coach. And I'm like, oh, thank you. I thought I was doing okay. So anyways, I got a speech coach. And so I've used a speech coach. And so hopefully I'm doing better. But so anyways, that was sort of the three things that we hadn't done before we're doing now.
Excellent. Love it. So the auto industry has seen a lot of challenges really due to the supply chain issues that we're dealing with now. How has that impacted the way that you're planning for the future?
Well, as many of you know, you can drive by any of our lots and you'll see that we don't have many vehicles on our lot anymore. And people will comment to me at sporting events and different things, and they'll say, hey, can we rent space on your parking lot, because we don't have any. So we certainly have come full circle from March of 2020 when we had all those vehicles. So it's not that we don't have the demand is there, we just don't have the product. And so, but it's interesting when I have our meetings and monthly meetings where we'll say, we have 100 vehicles to start the month and we'll sell 130 throughout the month. And I'll say, well, how in the world is that happening? And so all these things that we always wanted to work at before, we're doing. We wanted to turn our vehicles faster, get them to the lot faster, do all these things, get them in faster, get them out. Obviously, a lot more pre-sold now today than they ever were. And so we're, a lot of those things because of the pandemic has caused us to do the things that we should have been doing before. And so, and of course, we're trying to sell. All of our team members used to sell from stock. I shouldn't say all of them, but the majority of our vehicles were sold from stock. Now today, obviously, we're selling them. You're ordering them ahead of time. And we're trying to educate our customers, if that's the case, that you do need to order. It's interesting, the sold units that are already sold, we'll put on the lot as soon as they come in just to show you that we have more vehicles, but they're actually customers are already sold until that customer comes in and picks it up. So, so we're doing things like that. And again, you guys all know, we mentioned it here about how demand is, we just haven't been able to produce enough vehicles in the country because of all the things that we're experiencing, whether it's labor shortage, all of our parts are stuck out in the port, and you've all heard about that. So labor shortages and that kind of thing. And they're not predicting it to be better probably for 24 months till we even see where we get back to what we were before. So, and everybody knows about the microchip shortages as well. So Steve, if you're looking for a new car, I would say you should come in and order one now. So we got it for you.
Colin needed one 2 days before school started, and you took care of me.
All right, good.
So I appreciate that. And one more question for you, Mark. What actions do you take to stay personally energized as you navigated through the last 18 months?
Well, yeah, no, it's been an emotionally challenging 18 months for me personally, and I've heard leaders are struggling with decision fatigue, which I can certainly relate to and understand. I think I have done a couple things which my wife will tell me that I'm a pretty disciplined individual, and I do the same things all the time. So I stuck with my daily routine as much as possible. It's exercise, spending time with my family, being outside, doing the things I enjoy to do. And of course, I'm a podcast junkie, so I love listening to leadership podcasts, and so I do that a lot.
Who are you listening to right now? Sorry to interrupt. I'm curious. Who are you listening to right now for leadership?
There's a lot. There's a lot. So, not that I'm avoiding that question, but there's a lot. I just don't want to.
I'll get it later.
All right. So, and of course, being a person of faith, my faith is very important to me. And so, how have I thought about that? Of course, over this past year, we had to rely a lot more, and just reminded me that God is in control and that He is my foundation. So everything that I do, I got to remember that and keep that first and foremost. And just even this past August, as we planned for our annual strategic board meeting in September, and I was not motivated to prepare for it because the Delta variant had come again. It's starting to rise up, and I was just like, man, this is frustrating. How can you plan when you don't know what's going to happen? And so I got this, I also would say I was in low-grade burnout mode at that point, too. So I was looking for something to motivate me, so I read the book The Motive by Patrick Lencioni. And if you've not read it, it's basic premise that, we have two motives for being in leadership. Either we're going to be driven to serve or we're going to be rewarded, and it's all about us. And so that re-energized me, being able to read that. I also recently just read You Were Made for This Moment by Max Lucado, and I moved from that attitude of why me to why not me. And so I'm here for that, and that's changed my perspective and my attitude as well. So. And again, attending events like this, talking to other leaders, understanding that these last 18 months, we're not alone, and there's a lot of things that have come our way that we've not experienced before. So those kind of things have all given me hope. So I would like to share this verse from Isaiah, which has been important to me. Isaiah 40. He gives strength to the weary, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. So that's been an encouragement for me.
Thanks, Mark. I liked what you said. You were looking for hope, and those are important things. I think we're all looking for hope, and I think we're starting to experience some of that. Thank you, Craig.
Hello.
So Craig is a non-family member CEO of a family-owned business. You bring a unique perspective, and I believe you are our largest employer here. So your quote, which I appreciated also, 2020 was the most difficult year of my career, but one I would not give up. We learn who we are under times of stress. Thank you. That says a lot, and I think we've all experienced that. So you're the largest employer represented here. What unique challenges did Clemens Food Group and Clemens Family Corporation overcome in the last 18 months? That's a big question.
Yeah, probably many similarities to what you've heard here today, but obviously unique because of the business we're in. First of all, one thing we were grateful early on to be deemed essential because of food, meat. However, quickly learned you can be essential, but if nobody shows up for work, it doesn't matter. And that's really the world we were in. I remember the first day coming to work and the parking lot was 75% empty. And I remember if anybody was on the roads back then, it was just a ghost town. So we had people scared, and we had also we have a population from Allentown, Lehigh County that has a lot of connection to New York City. And so we were dealing with the realities of COVID with team members also early on. So you had people scared. You had the business change, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But and so then you had also OSHA and CDC changing guidelines on really what the best, masks, no masks, all these things were changing. So the dynamics of that were fresh and new, and we were early into the issue, and of people scared. On top of that, we produce about 4 billion, if you think about this, 4 billion meals a year. And our largest is food service, which people don't realize. So immediately, our food service sales were zero. In fact, I remember we were shipping orders, and we had some orders in the system for food services, because they hadn't had the chance to change their forecasts. And we immediately had product coming back that couldn't be sold, millions of pounds of product in the food service business. The market dynamics, pork is a commodity like others, supply and demand. We had, because of the demand side went to zero on the food service side, the values fell. So in 126 years of existence, we had the worst financial week in the history of the company in late March, I believe it was. So we had all those dynamics. On top of that, we had, it was interesting, President Trump at that time put in a defense act that basically says you have to keep food businesses open. And it was interesting, we had a couple calls with actually Mike Pence and one with Donald Trump by himself too, that basically said, we need you, persevere, work through it. But the last thing we need, toilet paper and paper towels is one thing, but when people run out of food, it's another thing. And so through this, along with a deep responsibility of caring for our team, we also had a deep responsibility of providing food that if we didn't, would also create, problems in the world and the neighborhood we live in. So those dynamics were interesting and part of why, grew and learned so much during that period of time. Also, we have 4,000 people that work for the company, and this location maybe about 3,000. In Coldwater, Michigan, 1,000. Coldwater, Michigan, we had the same issue, but it was like 6 months later, 5 months later. So we had the luxury there of focusing on here. But anyway, that sets the kind of the environment that we were in.
So what were the steps that you and your leadership team went through as you navigated this crisis?
Yeah, like everybody else, we went to an immediate crisis team. We met every morning, 7 days a week at 7 a.m. And obviously the first and foremost priority was safety for our team members and communication. So we quickly went into a daily communication with team members. And so they would get talking points every morning before they start the work. But of course, we had a lot of people not there yet that were afraid, didn't know. So we also had our HR business partners and our supervisors calling team members outside, giving them assurances of what we were doing for their safety. And that went on for several weeks, but very quickly was surprised at how much momentum and trust when people saw we were doing everything we could to provide safety. And again, in a scary environment, right? And we had a team member die. We had a team member's spouse die. We had shareholders later with complications of COVID. So there was a reality of that that was really an emotional time. And so when we met daily, and it was just crazy times because we think like we need to be prepared for this, which could be coming in a day or two. Before that day was over, we'd have to call another meeting because it's here now. And so that's just the mode we were in at that time. But probably looking back, one thing that was really made a difference, we also created a team that their full-time job was just cascading the messaging to our team members. So the senior team would decide what that was, the crisis team, but they focused on that, and then they also focused at feedback and listening, so we were hearing what their concerns were and what we needed to communicate. That allowed, though, the senior team or the crisis team to also focus more on the business side, too, after those things. And what did we need to do for market dynamics for part of the business that died, and then all of a sudden retail business exploded, or the opportunity. And so how do we fill those gaps? How do we thrive in that environment? So we focused on that. We also, going back to team members, little things, we got famous people from outside the company to send some inspirational messages to our team members. For example, our Latino population, we got Pitbull, who did a filming of a video for us to thank our people because healthcare people were getting acknowledged for the hero work, but the food and the meat folks were not, and so we needed to give them the inspiration. And in Coldwater, Michigan, it was Uncle Cracker, if you can imagine that. But he sent a message, he's from Michigan, and so we tried to just we need to make sure we're encouraging people. They were taking a risk. And some people, if they had high health issues, of course, we didn't want them there. But it was a difficult time. It was an emotional time. The other part I would say that created success early on, and I got these 3 words on my wall in my office: discuss, decide, support. And a lot of different opinions and a lot of emotional opinions on the crisis team, which is fine because it was a very emotional time. But the key word there is at the end, support. No matter where we were with our ideas or whatever, when we decided to deliver something, we would wholeheartedly align to that support, and was really proud of the team that did that, and we came out unified. So that's one thing. Even though we're a bigger company, we have the luxury of having more people involved with the crisis and the communication. So it was crazy times.
Much of your staff does not have the luxury of working from home or remotely. What long-term processes have you now put in place to keep your in-person employees safe?
Yeah. Well, we've done everything that I can think of, that we could think of. First of all, we don't have the luxury of 6 feet apart in our production floor. However, plexiglass dividers, temperature checks, spacing in the cafeteria, dividers in the cafeteria. One thing we have the luxury here on the campus here is we have our own clinic. So We early on provide testing for COVID, antibody tested COVID, and vaccinations for COVID. And because of the relationship there also with the medical team, education for team members. So we know every team member in the company that whether they've got a vaccination or not. And you know, my mission is I want to get one more tomorrow than I had yesterday. You know, and that's through education, through scare. You know, people are scared, and we have to. Everybody's got their own concerns and all that. But yeah, so if you've masks, everything else, sanitize. We were a food company, so sanitizing and all that stuff wasn't an issue. But we're doing that. Also, we still do some allow some outside work at home from the other areas. Not necessarily to protect them, but to help protect the team members that do need to come to work every day. And that was part of a big, during the first year, we encouraged people, and many of them, we made them work from home to protect them, but also the internal team that was here.
Thanks. So staffing has become a widespread issue. My guess is you've been dealing with that. How have you adjusted your recruiting and hiring efforts?
Well, let me give you a list of things that we haven't adjusted. That's it. If you were, yeah, this is my main focus right now across the corporation, and convinced that over the next 10 years, the difference makers in any marketplace, in any business, is going to be those that can attract and retain talent. So we've done a number of things. I've got a list here that helped me. So we have done enhanced communication, but we've done some significant increases in pay. $2.50, $3 an hour. We have our medical insurance, no waiting period, so you can, if you get hired, you're automatically on benefits. We've changed our orientation, we've changed our training, we've changed our onboarding. We're engaging in a couple $1 million remodeling of an area that's going to be our people center, our team member center. Put our best foot forward there. We're moving into a dream maker model from a coaching or whatever, which we're finding team members at some locations don't have the resources when they're growing up or the connections with family and friends to understand how to buy a car or how to own a house. And so we're helping them with the path to what their dreams are and help them make those a reality. And we have some really interesting stories of folks that have done that. And once you get 2 or 3 like that, they're part of telling that message too, which has been great. We are also some interesting things in Michigan, especially. We've went to a flex schedule. So traditionally, we work 5 days a week and then a Saturday. Well, we've gone to a 6-day operation, but flex teams. So a team member will work 4 10s, and then if they want to work over the time, they can, but it allows them more flexibility in their work schedule. And that's the only plant in the meat industry in the nation that has done that. And it has significantly helped turnover by providing what people want today is some flexibility. They need time in the week, like we all do, to take care of, you know, grandma to the hospital or kids to an appointment or whatever. And so that's something we'll continue to do. We are looking into a few things. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but you're finding, like, example for restaurants are struggling hiring, and you hear, well, why? Well, Uber Eats and some of these aren't, because people can work their schedule and they can get paid when they want. So we're looking at some things maybe in certain departments where we have some type of gig schedule where you can get trained, you can bid on the jobs that are available through an app, and part-time, that's fine, but then also possibly request payment the day after you work when you go in to get paid. And it seems like that's where the young people today are going. They want to be able to pick and choose and have flexibility. I don't know how that's, in many of our jobs that won't work well, but there's a number of jobs that it will. And so we're exploring that and see what that looks like.
Thanks. That's a lot of thinking outside the box, which we've all had to do, but that's really it. So, Craig, when you provided your quote for today's topic, you mentioned 2020 was the most difficult year of your career, but one that you would not give up. So what did you learn about yourself and your company that has made you stronger?
Well, about myself, the one, when I talked about messaging too, is everything was followed up with, we will get through this and we'll be stronger. And I believed it. And I don't know the exact quote, but James 1, verse 2, about when in face of adversity, being thankful, which is hard. But during that period, I remember that's really all you had. You didn't know if you were doing the right thing, but if you could go home saying, I did the best I could. and then lean on the Lord to say, okay, what I'm going to learn from this? We're going to be stronger, but I believe that. So personally, it strengthened that relationship with me, and that also confidence that, we fall on our butt, we pick up, we don't always make the right decisions, but we have the ability to persevere. The team I thought was fascinating. So I'm a watcher of people, and I like to really observe talent in people. And I was amazed. A few folks ran for the hills, and some leaders and managers and I understand, no problem. They had family or whatever, but I also saw people that have family that came and said, how do I help? And some of those folks we invited to be part of the daily meeting, on the crisis meeting, because they put their well-being aside and said, I need to help you guys with these 4,000 people. And so it was amazing how some people, they were very inspiring, and how some people stepped up. And I'm sure all of you have seen that in your last 18 months here. So it made me, just really grateful and inspired. It was just really inspiring, even though the trouble you go through and you see people, what they're doing and willing to pitch in for, it was something else. So.
Thank you. Thank you all. That was fantastic. I really appreciate you sharing. So we do have a few minutes yet, and I have a couple questions for each one of you, and I still do want time for Q&A. So it's about 5 after 12. We've got about 20 minutes yet. So I think one of the first questions I want to ask is, we really answered a lot of these questions so far. So the last 18 months forced a lot of change on businesses. And we talked about this, but I think maybe let's dig a little bit further into this. But so what are some of those changes that you as a company or you personally will be making permanent as we move out of this COVID era? And anybody who wants to pick up and go first. Mark, I see you reaching for your mic.
One of the things that we did was, for over 30 years, we had an annual picnic on the second Saturday in July, and that was something we would never break. We still wouldn't have broken that today if the pandemic wouldn't have came through. But so now we've moved to and you would get probably a third of our employees would come to that. So today we're doing a Appreciation Day. So it's the first Friday of October, where we have all across all the locations. There's games and different activities and awards that we hand out and those type of things. And so it's been really neat to do that for 2 years. We haven't had our picnic in 2 years, but we've moved to more of a team member. And then, of course, you're getting all your team members to participate in that. And so that's something that we have done, and really, I think we're trying to show more appreciation to our team more often, more regularly, than waiting for sort of one event. And so that's something we've done. And food trucks in our company have become a norm now at all of our locations. So.
Yeah, I smile when Mark mentioned about routine, because I'm a routine person, and so I thought, I know some people kind of get off their routine during this time, but I clung to my routines even more because it gave me some sense of normalcy in everything else going on, all that chaos, doing the exercise and getting up at a certain time and making sure you did this and making sure you did that. And that sort of gave me some comfort. And I'd say from the work perspective, the town hall meetings that we were doing weekly, we've continued to have those monthly. And we've had at least 25 or 30 participants, almost 10% of our workforce, 10% or more every time at those. And so we're going to continue those forums. This gives everybody an opportunity to hear from the executive team as well as ask any questions they have, and seems like a nice way to stay in touch with all levels of our employees.
I would say forced flexibility. For those of you who do yoga or exercise, a good yoga teacher will let you try the position and then adjust you, tell you to breathe, and push you further. And I think that's how this time has been, and it's a way that we have to be kind of forevermore, because this world is changing very quickly. Unpredictable things happen, and so we have to get used to the discomfort, stretch, and breathe, and let other people help us and adjust us along the way.
Yeah, and I would just add, we spend less time now with customers face-to-face and realize, you know what, we didn't need to always be face-to-face, and they're happy with it too. Team members, more communication, WebEx is fine with often that. There's some things that face-to-face are still important, but I think we overdid it before, and we've learned that we can be effective, and our customers are asking for that. The other thing that we had, because we were able to persevere and outperform, even though we had our rough times, we quickly passed through that. We then became we ran more hours, more product, because our competitors got stuck in the midst of their issues for a long time. So we gained a lot of new customers that have stuck with us and basically said during that period that, hey, we are impressed, your team is great, we are going to continue business. So we've especially in the retail business in the Midwest, is now an expansion out there that we've been able to win at because of our success of working through this better than our competition. So.
Wonderful. Those are kind of exciting things. So while we don't like what we've gone through, there's some really good things that have come out of it. It was forced, it was accelerated, it was expanded, but we can live with that. I would like to open up for Q&A. Yes, I have one back here. So what I'm going to do is give me your name, and then give me the question. I'll repeat the question so our friends at home can hear. All right. So go ahead.
See if I get this order right. I'm Ken Carfagno. What was the next part? My company?
Well, yeah, you can give us your company.
Oh, okay. Carfagno Commercial Cleaning. My question is for Mark, but I'd love to hear from others too. So my question to Mark, I am also a giant podcast junkie, and I'm curious, with all the leadership podcasts and lessons and books you're reading, I also love self-development. What is, can you give something tangible, something you learned that you had to apply immediately into a leadership situation?
So the question, this is Ken Carfagno from Carfagno Cleaning. And his question specifically is to Mark Bergey, but he'd also be interested in hearing from others. So what podcasts are you listening to, and self-development pieces have you been learning that you have been immediately needing to really internalizing and start acting on? Did I get that? Good. Okay. Thanks.
Well, I can answer your question now, too. Maybe I can list my podcast. So I enjoy Craig Groeschel, Andy Stanley, Dave Ramsey, Entree Leadership, Faith-Driven Entrepreneur. There's a lot, so I can't say all of them. But obviously during those leadership, I think there's self-development there. We also didn't say that we do have a leadership where we're developing leaders within our company. So we have an outside resource that comes in that I participate in that, which is very helpful in my, this is the third time I'm going through it. So it's helpful for me as I'm going through it to, you only pick up certain things the first time you go through something the second time. And so those are some of the things that I think that I've been able to use and learn from them to apply back to the company, back to the team. So hopefully that answered your question, but through those things.
Jenny, Craig, or Dave, do you have any additional? And I should say, I think I said, if you ask a question and they choose to pass, we give them that opportunity. So keep that one in mind. Who's got my next question? Yes. Yep.
Hi.
Al.
Great session. Al Engel is my name. I live in Franconia and familiar with most of your businesses. Just listening to this brings some real meaning to Donald Rumsfeld's quote. There are known knowns, there are known unknowns, and then there are unknown unknowns. And I guess this is a real unknown, a black swan event. But my question to you is, you're all managing businesses. You're probably worried about inflation and macroeconomics. We've heard about the supply chain problem, the labor shortage. Do you see inflation as a transient or as a serious concern? We're printing a lot of money, and how do you see that from your perspective in running the business?
Good, thanks. That was Al Engel, and his question revolved around inflation. It impacts all of your businesses. Do you see it as really short-term, transitory, or long-term?
I'll start. I mean, I feel like maybe too soon to tell. That there is. It's real though. I mean, that's the thing. People, it's going to go away. Well, for your employees who all of a sudden have to pay more for food and gas and everything else they do, and we have some, relatively low earning employees. Our entry level folks make $15 an hour. It has a true impact on them. So it's definitely going to impact the bank and having to pay people more money. I think that the labor force is probably permanently shrunk. I think people that were, 62, 63 years old and decided to leave the labor force, or somebody chose to make them leave the labor force, and as they decide to retire, they're probably not coming back. So that's going to reduce the labor force. I think there's been a lot of people that decided to stay home. They figured out a way to make it work with one salary. So either the father or the mother staying home are going to stay home for a period of time. So I think the labor force is shrunk. So I think the labor force price for labor is going to go up and stay up, and I think inflation is definitely going to be real there. I think on the other side of that, the wholesale prices, a lot of that's been driven by the supply chain disruption. So I think that will probably start to flatten out some over the next 24 months as that comes undone. But I think we're definitely going to see inflation, hopefully not as high as we saw in the early 80s, but I think we're definitely going to start seeing inflation 4 or 5% for the next couple years while we work through that. A lot of that's going to depend on whether the labor force grows, and that probably has a lot to do with whether we allow more immigration or not in the country, because that's probably where the labor force is going to come from, because we aren't having enough babies, the people that live here, to replace our current population. So if we want to grow our labor force, we're almost going to have to import that labor force to some extent. So I think for the next 3 to 5 years, I expect inflation to be at least 4% a year, maybe a little higher in a couple of those years.
I would agree with that. I think the transitory piece, I'm pretty opinionated on that. That's mostly baloney. But there are some current components that are hot right now, supply chain issues and whatnot. But I think we may be just seeing the beginning of the labor piece too across. And I can tell you, in our business, we're getting price increases on everything, and a lot of it related to labor. And so you read a lot about inflationary food costs and all that. And I don't think that's going away. So, but there are some parts that are crazy right now because of the issues going on. So.
Mark or Jenny, any additional comments? No? Okay.
Just one little thing, and it's, I think about teaching our children and our young adults about how to live in this financial world, so that financial intelligence, encouraging kids, whether they're yours or not yours, to take classes that teach them about modern finances and how to manage their own, how to be financially solvent in this world today.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, sir.
John Weisberg. I'm with Bergey, but for 30 years of my career, I spent in the media industry. I've been attached to 14 different communities. And prior to COVID, what we were really seeing in the media industry was a shift in the disappearance of retail in your downtown area. So it really was a disappearance of part of your community was going away. COVID has really exposed companies to their ability to perform without having their employees need to be at those locations. And I've got to think that we're really going to be seeing a dawn of a new day where communities have gone from the cities, and as manufacturing had gone away in the 40s and 50s, to the suburban areas. And now the suburban areas, with their anchors, if you don't have to touch the product, you don't have to live there. So I see more of a shift of the communities getting fragmented even more, with people being able to live further away and really not even being connected demographically and geographically into those cities. So I think the challenge really is going to be for our community leaders, our community business, to really continue to make their communities vibrant. And it's going to be more of a challenge because you're going to, if you don't need the employees to be in those offices, they don't need to live there. They don't even need to live in those states. So I really see this as a challenge. And just my question to the panel is really, have you really thought about, you know, in the coming years, you know, if you live, for instance, if you lived in Jackson, Michigan, at one time, Jackson, Michigan had the opportunity to say, do we want to identify our community of being able to own the state prison, or to have Michigan State be part of our community? Jackson chose that, hey, we think there's always going to be lawbreakers. We want to own the state prison as our community. As it turned out, Lansing looks a lot better than Jackson, Michigan with that decision. So yeah, I just see this as a challenge for our community, and it's there, it's real, and we're going to see a disbursement in our community. So I just wonder, it's going to be harder to employ people as our communities become more fragmented. But if the panel, I'd like to know if they see this now as a new challenge. We've created an opportunity to work away from home, and now we can work away from the state.
So that was John Weisberg from Bergey's, and the question really revolves around this idea of community. As we are now really able to work remotely and not necessarily live or be in the places that we're employed, and the fragmentation that could potentially happen out of that. So how do we? Is that, I guess, and is that something we can work at, and how do we work at that?
Yeah, that's really a good point, that communities are fragmented. People's communities are closer to home, wherever their workplace is. That's where they're shopping. They're less willing to go long distances. And so, I mean, in a way, that's a good thing, because people are creating communities with their neighbors. If you're serving them, I think it's really important to understand what's going on in all of those cells, in all of those communities. So, for example, Kauai is 5,000 miles away, but I can tell you what's going on because I look at social media, I scroll through, I use it as a tool. I don't necessarily post a lot of things, but I scroll through. So I know what's going on in people's personal lives. I know what's going on in the communities. Because I've subscribed to certain groups, so I can kind of monitor what's happening. I read the local news, so I see what's important there, what issues are popping up, what things are unresolved, what the opportunities might be. But it's, I think, very helpful to be informed about the different communities that you might be serving and living in, because many of us have not really even been part of our local communities for a very long time. You know, if we've been commuting an hour away or an hour and a half away each day, we might not have any idea what's going on next door. So I encourage everybody to try to find out what's happening with our neighbors.
Yeah, I think it's just a very disparate market around here. I mean, it's very hard to keep track of everything that's going on. So you just have to. I mean, we have branches in Montgomery, Bucks County, and Lehigh, and those are somewhat, Montgomery and Bucks are similar markets. Lehigh's quite a bit different. So I agree with that. You have to really stay on top of everything. I think that people don't necessarily feel the way about their neighbors that they used to. We first moved in our neighborhood in Milford Township outside Quakertown. We tried to get a block party going. Every year the participation went down and lower and lower and lower. It was interesting to see that. I want to live in a nice place. I want to maybe say hello to my neighbors, but I'm not necessarily wanting to do anything social with them. So you have seen that change. But I think it really is, as a business, we just try to stay as much in tune with all the communities that we serve, and then figuring out a way to play an active role in those communities. But I think people are still looking for places to come together, places to see other people. You know, we had the Charlie Barn open up, which we were involved with part of the financing there, and in Quakertown, and it's been phenomenally successful. Even during the coronavirus, once they were able to be open, they've been successful. And then once the coronavirus has been a little bit not as bad, the people flock there. So I think the people are still looking for gathering points, looking for places they can get together with other people. But you definitely have to figure out a way to stay in tune with everybody, because probably in my neighborhood and all around this area, 50% of the people either have long commutes or only commute 1 or 2 days and work from home the rest of the time. So there's not that very few people that live in the greater Quakertown area also work in the greater Quakertown area. It's 1 out of maybe 100. So you really have to figure out where they're commuting. How do you reach those people?
Craig or Mark? I would speak into that a little bit too from the Chamber of Commerce perspective. So I'm getting together with my colleagues across the state tomorrow for a 3-day conference, and what tends to happen in most communities in Pennsylvania is that you have one Chamber of Commerce per county. That doesn't work in the southeast quadrant of Pennsylvania. We have really unique communities, and roads become dividing lines, right? So, the Indian Valley kind of runs from Silverdale to Skipback, Quakertown down to Lansdale. And one of the things that I have taken on as my mantle, I may not communicate this very well, and I don't necessarily need to communicate this, but it's kind of in the back of my mind when I do things, is really, how do we create this region, the Indian Valley region? How do we hold it together? How do we serve the businesses? How do we help our businesses serve the people that live here, so it becomes a place where business owners want to domicile their businesses, and people want to live and raise a family? So I think those are really, really important questions. And so while parts of it have become bedroom community, I think there are other things that are, really kind of unique about this area, in that a lot of our businesses, the owners live here and the employees live here. Now, Craig, I think Clemens is a little bit of a unique company because you pull your employees from so far away. But my guess is many of your management folks and office folks live here also. So I think there's something to be said about that, because how do we create that sense of community and belongingness and rootedness? There's something really to be said about that. And I think that's something we need to kind of keep in the back of our mind as we work at that. I think we would have time for one more quick question. Yes.
Bob Smurl. Just real quick, Mark, I think we might be related. I have the same nephews that would also bless me with Photoshop pictures of myself. My question is for Dave. You said there's not a lot of borrowing going on. I'm wondering, is that an indication of a lack of capital expense and capital investment, and is that something that's going to come back to affect us adversely in the future?
That was Bob Smurl from Smurl Insurance, and really asking specifically, Dave, the lack of lending. Is that what is that primarily due to?
Yeah, we've really seen a decent amount of investment in equipment, as well as real estate related, so expansions and those kinds of things. That's definitely been going on. So that it's really been the immediate asset needs, your cash flow needs that we aren't seeing. So we typically on lines of credit, we might run, at a high point, we probably have 65% line utilization. We're down around 20% right now. Well, that's a huge, for us, that's a lot of millions of dollars that aren't going out the door. And the same thing on consumers. Our home equity lines right now, we have 20% utilization. So that usually runs around 40 to 45%. So people, I think because there is so much cash in the economy, there's not borrowing. But I expect that to be a temporary thing. They got to burn through their cash, and I expect them to be back borrowing. But I think we've actually seen a decent amount of borrowing for capital because people can't find labor. So one way of replacing labor is to get more capital, better tools, better equipment, operate with less people. So I think we've definitely seen that. We'll see more of that as the labor shortage continues.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank our speakers for sharing their thoughts and insights with us today. I trust that each one of you have found a nugget or two or multiple bits of wisdom to take with you, and also as an encouragement over the next several weeks and months. We have all had unique experiences as we've dealt with over the last 24 months or so. But we have all endured a common experience, and we've grown and we've learned to do things in new ways in a really short period of time, right? A really short period of time. But it's been an opportunity to learn new ways to do business, to interact with colleagues and lead groups. And while it's been a little bit of an unsettling time, it's also been full of opportunities, which has allowed each of us to create a better community. So we'll do this by meeting with one another. We do this by listening to each other's stories, and we do it by learning from one another. So I want to thank again our panelists for sharing really their really very interesting insights with us today. I want to thank QNB Bank for being our presenting sponsor, and I want to thank each one of you in the audience for being here today as we work at creating the community we want for the Indian Valley region. This program will be posted on our YouTube channel later this day, so feel free to share it, like it, and make a comment on it. Join us again on November 10th for our next live event. We're going to be having a tax update on how best to position and prepare yourself for year-end taxes. And December 9 is LeaderCast. I don't know how many of you have been to LeaderCast before. It is an excellent day full of leadership lessons, oftentimes anchored by Andy Stanley, Mark. So I always appreciate hearing from Andy Stanley. So it'd be great for you and your team members. We look forward to seeing you soon. It was good to see you. Have a great rest of the day.